is that, that if you plan ahead, you get good people around you, then you can execute very well. And it's all about the people that you surround yourself with, and far less about me. That building, once I had conceived it, the concept of doing that deal, it was about the people around me who were going to execute it. So my lesson was to bring on the best people possible to help me do that. But at the same hand, I was building for a purpose. I mean, I knew I was breaking some barriers. I didn't want to let the mayor down, and I also felt an obligation to provide opportunities on the construction side. So I made for black businesses. So I made the contractor commit to 35% of all of the work on the project to be by black businesses.
That's right. What you're describing too also was basically a public-private partnership as well, and that's been a big pathway, particularly for a lot of minority real estate developers, certainly in your heyday. Is that still the case now? Is that the primary avenue for young real estate developers to go through, or is there another path?
Well, I think public-private partnerships are the best way to go into the business. I was able to do that deal, as I described, was essentially no money of my own. I didn't have to put up any money of my own. What private sector deals are much more efficient, and there is a lot of institutional bias towards black entrepreneurs. And so there you have to rely on third-party capital. You have to acquire the property right away, and you don't have a chance to structure a deal to control it. The public-private process allows you to control the deal first. So you can go and compete in a public competition, and price isn't the sole determining factor. Price is one of the components. Economic inclusion would be important, like a place like Atlanta. What you build, where you build it, those are more important than the money. So if you go in an environment like that, we have a much better chance of competing. And then normally the government wants to see diversity in the development team, and so if you do that, that's a value. And then you can control the property because you don't have to pay for it until you're ready to start construction, which could be a year or 2 years or 3 years out from when you are selected to bid it. So that gives you a chance to package it and then go out and raise the money necessary to build it.
Is there a component to this that has changed though? When we talk about access to capital, and this is a big theme, frankly, of InvestFest overall, as to how people like us get better access to capital, whether it's to fund our real estate dreams or something else here. Have you seen an improvement in that area? Are there more people willing to entertain that idea from somebody like you or me?
I think there's more of a discussion about it, and it's certainly at more of a higher level, but there's been this pushback to DEI, or diversity, inclusion, and equity. And what's happening is that the capital is allocated by the same people who have controlled it for many decades. So just so people understand, if you're going to build a $100 million real estate development project, the way that is financed is about 65% of that, $65 million, would be provided by a bank. The 35%, which is $35 million, is equity. So an entrepreneurial developer is going to go to private equity to raise that. And normally you can do a 90-10 split. So the private equity fund would put up 90% and the developer would put up 10%, which would be $3.5 million. So if you can raise the $3.5 million or have that, then you get to go and build your building. However, private equity is, Wall Street firms have private equity groups. And what they do is they raise money from public employee pension systems. And many of the public employee pension systems, like Georgia, state government employees, or Atlanta's municipal employee pension system, or New York State's pension system, many of those pension systems are majority, the workers in those systems are majority black or women, but yet we get less than 1% of the capital out of those pension systems through these private equity funds. So the challenge is that how do we make the capital flow based on whose money it is? So we can't even get our own fair share of our own money.
But yeah, I'm sure you've seen and heard all of the pushback to DEI. And a few months ago, you were at a conference in Los Angeles, the Milken Conference, where Bill Ackman, major investor who's been very against a lot of DEI initiatives. You had a chance to sit on a panel with him, and confront him with some of these issues, what was his response?
Well, his response was that basically he was for diversity, inclusion, and equity until there was this, conflict with the Palestinians and Israel on Gaza. And then there were protests on state campuses where young people were questioning, the attacks on, the Palestinians in Gaza. And that changed his view of DEI because he said the protesters were mainly DEI. So what he was saying is that the protesters were diverse. And so therefore he lost his tolerance for that. And so I told him I thought that was, unfounded and inappropriate, and that, that he should be looking to provide opportunities reflective of the people whose money he's managing.
And whose money is he managing?
He's managing public employee pension systems. So he's managing your money, or your parents' money, or your cousin's money, or your aunt's money, but everybody in here, raise your hand if somebody in your family works for the government of any place around this country. So see that? That's your money. So that's their money, and they're not getting access to it.
How do you make that a little bit clearer, not just to someone like Bill Ackman, but to the mayors, the governors, and ultimately the president and other people that really do control the purse strings? Do they understand that?
Well, I think the problem is that somebody gets shot, an unarmed black man gets shot, people see that, or someone gets harassed by the police, or there's not enough housing to go around. Everybody understands that. But what they don't teach any of our young people in school is capital, money, financial literacy. And very few people understand when they work in a government where their pension money goes. They just think the government takes out something out of their check each month, and then when they retire, the government gives them back. They don't understand that it's a pension system that then manages that money and hires investment managers to manage that money. I want to give everybody an understanding of the magnitude here. Right now, there's $87 trillion invested in venture capital and private equity. So those are the firms that invest in startups on apps, technology, businesses, banks, real estate, you name it. Out of that $87 trillion, less than 1.3% of it is invested in firms run or owned by women and people of color combined. So 98.7% of all investment money goes to white men. Now, that's inequitable and unfair, but nobody understands that and we don't talk about it. So we have to raise that issue politically. We shouldn't be focusing on who we like or dislike, but we need to be talking about this issue.
And to even put a finer point on that, I was looking at some of the statistics on real estate developers. I found there were 112,000 listed real estate development companies. 111,000 of them were owned or controlled by white owners.
Yes.
Where is the change going to come from? Is it going to come from someone like you, or do we need something more?
The change is going to come from them. It ain't going to come from me. I'm one person. But to give everybody an understanding of the magnitude. So remember that $100 million deal we talked about. Let's say we get it financed and we're successful. The building is an apartment building. It's open and it's performing. Well, our $3.5 million is sitting into that building. So where do we get the next $3.5 million to go and do the next $100 million building? Or if we need 7 or 10 million, where do we get that money to do a bigger building? We have to get it where the same 111,000 white developers get it, private equity and venture capital. But that money is allocated by Wall Street white-owned firms, and they bring their inherent bias with them. And they allocate that capital to their friends, not on a meritorious basis. They do it based on relationships. We have to take control of our own money and have to demand something better. We cannot be focused on, okay, we're gonna have a rent freeze of 5%. right? We should be saying, how do we make more black millionaires? How do we make more black billionaires?
When you look at the progress that we have made, and let's just point out, I mean, for all the challenges we have, we've made a ton of progress here. What is the biggest change for the younger generation? Is it going to come at kind of the collegiate level? Do you need more public partnerships, public-private partnerships for new graduates? What sort of lays the foundation for that next generation of Don Peebles?
I think a couple of different ways. So first of all, I mean, education. We need to have financial literacy taught early on. We have to encourage our children, our nieces, our nephews, our friends, and others. We have to encourage them to read about finance, read about entrepreneurship. We have to go and get educated and go into financial services and financial industries and be willing, once we get into those positions, to actually do something to advance our community forward. I mean, a lot of times we have people who are black going into these positions of authority but aren't willing to take any chance or perceived chance of providing opportunities to us. The second thing is that we got to be more, by the way, if we work together, we'd already have tremendous progress, right? And what's good here is everybody here is together and working together. So we got to figure out how to do that. Secondly, we should be willing to pursue our entrepreneurial dreams, to go for those dreams, to go and pursue entrepreneurship, and to take our shot, and not be afraid to take our shot, and to try. And